All right. So, hello everyone again. Let's get started talking about performance monitoring with ProTop, with the free edition. Now, I am valiantly going to attempt to do a demo later on. I seem to have internet access, but I am the most pessimistic. I never do demos because they always go wrong. So, I want you to know there's negative karma around the table here when it comes to demos. I expect something to go wrong, all right? So I already talked about this. You know all about White Star Software. You know all about me. You can look at my twins again because that's worth looking at. But really here we're talking about ProTop. And this is not a commercial session. So unless I say otherwise or I screw something up, everything I'm going to show you today is free. At the very end, I'm going to show you a few slides about the paid version. And there's a couple of places where you'll see dollar signs, which is the paid version. But 99% of what you're going to see here is absolutely free. You can go download it tomorrow. All right? Oh, now I got to start all over again.
See the twins again.
That's right. Here's my twins again. That's all that's important. The rest doesn't matter. So I will repeat that this is not a commercial session, right? So if you have questions about the commercial product, see me after so that this doesn't become a commercial session and I get yelled at. All right. So what's ProTop? So ProTop really is, there's kind of two things that we talk about when we talk about ProTop. And the first one is the interactive real-time monitoring tool. So it's the character interface. So who has never seen ProTop ever? A couple of people have never seen ProTop ever. Cool. A few people, even better. So we like to call it ProMon on steroids. So really what it does is it takes data from all kinds of different places, whether it's the VSTs, whether it's got a screen scrape ProMon in some cases, whether it's got to do a shell out and run some command RFUDL. It does kind of all of that, right? It does all of that and then puts it into one correlated view. And that's the most important thing if you're used to using ProMon, where ProMon you've got to kind of jump to screen to screen to screen to screen to screen, and ProTop attempts to put all of these things onto one screen for you, a very dense screen, as you'll see. All right. What's it good for? Checking your configuration, right? So there's a lot of stuff out of the box that'll flag as red when you're running the character edition of ProTop. It's good for finding performance problems, which is really kind of the central part of today's talk. I mentioned correlating scattered metrics, right? So you don't have to go and run 63 commands in 5 different windows. ProTop kind of does all of that for you and presents it to you in one unified view. And then it allows you to drill down. So we're going to talk about and show you how you can drill down and look really at the user level and go see exactly what the user is doing, which is the most important thing, right? When you're faced with a problem and you need to quickly find, I have to add that, quickly find the cause of the problem so that you can resolve it. And that's really the strength of ProTop, the free edition here, the interactive monitoring tool, all right? And who's a developer in here? So we strongly encourage developers to run ProTop in the developer environment, and I'm going to show you later what we call programmer mode. And the important thing for developers is so that you can test reality before you deploy in production. So many times you're testing your code in test, but test is not a true reflection of production. And so you're not really testing adequately. You put something in production, and then I get the phone call, and it's your bad code. Now, it's good for me as a consultant, but we're trying to prevent that as much as possible. And so using ProTop in your development environment and really having 2 screens open, right? Having Developer Studio in one screen and having ProTop in another screen, and I'll show you developer mode, programmer mode. You can really run your program, validate what you thought was happening, right? And then make that part of your QA process before you deploy in production. Very important here. All right, this is kind of a quick look. I had to actually condense it a little bit to get it to fit on a slide, so it's not quite that condensed, but this is one of the many, many, many ProTop screens, and we'll see the ProTop screens later. But you can see we call this the dashboard screen. So it's really giving you a lot of information. So you're seeing logical reads and OS reads and record reads and index reads. You're seeing all kinds of stuff about how is the machine doing. We call this thing BOGO MIPS and IO response time. You're seeing how your APWs and your BIWs are doing. How's your AI and BI rights doing? How many users are connected? All the stuff about your APWs all over here. So you can see a very, very, very condensed view. And again, it goes and gets all kinds of information and puts them together in an intelligent way so that you can see all the important things in one screen, as opposed to, again, having to jump from screen to screen to screen to screen, which is the hard thing. So the second part of ProTop is the web portal. So the real-time character tool, that's one thing. You're doing real-time analysis. The ProTop web portal is the graphical trend analysis tool. So what happens is when you enable this, when you install ProTop, you can choose or not to enable the graphical portal. We call them our ProTop agents, will upload data to our web portal and then store that data so that you can have access to it, so that you can do trend analysis. All right. The free version gives you 48 hours of history, and the paid version gives you up to 3 years of history. So you can really get a long-term view of your table reads, of your database reads, of everything really that's going on in your database. All right. But 48 hours is more than enough to analyze a recent event. So if something happened last night and you come in the morning, well, you've got that history available to you so that you can do your real-time analysis, or your trend analysis of what's going on. It's cloud-based, like I said, and we have very, very lightweight agents. Everything's written in the 4GL, so it's all in progress. Very lightweight agents that'll collect the data and then upload it to the cloud. And I didn't mention this here, the consolidated alert portal. We'll look at that quickly later, especially because we're going to probably expose part of the alert portal to the free version this summer, so you'll see it, but it also gives you a very single pane of glass view of all your environment, all your app servers, all your databases, everything, kind of in one single pane of glass view, so you can see the status of all your resources. So the web portal, the graphical web portal, looks something like this, and we'll look at it more in detail later, but you can see connections. These are BOGO MIPS and IO response time, our operating system metrics. You can see here, when was your last backup, your AI status, the size of your database. So a lot of this information, database reads and so on and so forth, all of this is available in the free version of ProTop in this dashboard. So I'm going to go quickly through installing ProTop. So when you go home, you try this yourself. Very quick and easy to do. Go to demo.wss.com, download it. Don't share your information because we're not GDPR compliant. But if you want to be on our mailing list, we put out a newsletter, a roughly quarterly newsletter. So if you want to be on the newsletter, please share your email address. There's a box. There will be a box that says I'm an EU citizen eventually. And make sure to pick the correct download. So most of you will probably download the source code version. So ProTop is open source. So most of the code is open source. It's all there. All the data collectors that we call them, so all the code that actually reads the VSTs and collects all that data is all open source. The bits that do the alerting and some of the communications, that's the proprietary stuff, and that's the stuff that's not open source, so that won't be source code. But you can install the source code, or you can go pick the R code for your version of Progress. So we've compiled everything down to 11.7 here for R code. And I think we only have 10.2b here, but we do support all the way back to 9.1e, but not in the free version, right? So we'll give a paid version customer 9.1e, 10.1a, 10.1c, but not the free version. All right, so unzip it. There's no setup.exe unzip to it. It doesn't ask you where to install it. So create a directory called ProTop and unzip the file into the ProTop directory, and then run pt3nst.sh or pt3install.bat, who's on Windows for their database servers. So a few of you. So run the bat file. There's no setup, and we have detailed instructions on the website that you can follow along. If you want access to trend data, you want to upload trend data to the free web portal, ask for a new cust ID. You do have to have the firewall open on HTTP port 80 to demo.wss.com. And if you don't, just pick local install. And then it won't try to do any kind of communications with anyone anywhere. All right? When you do this installation, you'll be given a customer ID, Z1234. We'll email you the username and password to log in, and you can log in. All right? ProTop will auto-discover running databases. So just give me the root directory where your databases are, /database, and it'll look for lock files and DB files in there, and it'll auto-discover them. It'll present them to you, ask you which ones you want to keep, which ones you don't, and then it'll configure all those databases for you. All right? And then the last step, if you are uploading data to our cloud, then you need to run what we call the DB monitor service. So on Windows, we'll automatically create the service called the ProTop monitor service that takes care of starting all the bits and pieces. If you're on Unix, there's a file called crontab.pt3. Just add the contents to your cron, and then the service will start automatically. So we didn't do a system control, blah, blah, blah. It's just a cron job that runs the DB monitor. All right? All right, so, and did I say this somewhere? I'll show you later. I know it doesn't matter. So for the demo, we're going to cross our fingers on the demo, all right? So what's the setup? So ProTop comes with ProTop free, comes with a couple of benchmarking tests that you can use. So the first one that I encourage you all to try, which I don't mention here, in the bin directory, there's a script called syncio.sh. And what syncio.sh does is it runs a ProUtil BI grow command. And what it does is it creates a 96 meg BI file. And what that does is it tests the write speed of your disk IO subsystem. So you go into the database directory and you run $protop bin syncio.sh or .bat, and it's going to give you a number, how long it took to run it, and it's going to tell you. If it took less than 10 seconds, you're in business. If it took you more than 10 seconds, a little bit more, you probably have a SAN. And if it took you significantly more than 10 seconds to run syncio.sh, so if it took 20, 30, 40 seconds, then your SAN is garbage, or I should say it's misconfigured, excuse me. Or you're running a NetApp, or you're running some kind of inconsistent or some kind of low performance disk subsystem. So I don't know how many times I've come into a multi-billion-dollar company and they just bought $1 million SAN from IBM, and it's the nuts, it's the fastest thing, it's all SSD drives, and then I run syncio and it takes 47 seconds, and I tell them, my spinning Rusk disk on my laptop, is faster than your disk IO subsystem, because you forget that my data has to go from the machine, it has to go across the fiber network, it's got to hit a Brocade switch, it's got to hit a VIOS if you're running some kind of disk virtualization software, then through the Brocade, finally, eventually, it's going to make its way to the SAN, and then it's going to be written to the SAN. And so all of those little bits and pieces get in the way and slow you down. So first thing you should do is run syncio.sh. The second thing that's cool to do, and you don't necessarily need to do this in your production environment, but we like to do this when we're migrating from one server to another, and that's to run read probe. And what read probe does is it does a very large number of reads, but only from the buffer cache. So it loads all the records into the buffer cache, and then it starts reading as fast as it can. And it keeps spawning more and more and more processes to read as fast as it can. And really what it's telling you is, let's take the disks out of the equation, and let's see how fast your application can read shared memory records from the database. So when you're going again from one platform to another, you're migrating VMware servers, you're doing anything like that, you can run read probe, and it'll give you an idea of how fast your machine is from an OpenEdge perspective on one side and then on the other side. And then there's a couple of other things we'll talk about. BOGO MIPS is one, again, that you can use to compare machines. So this is really cool for our demo today, because we're going to see a lot of rapid readers going on here. So what are we going to see? Well, I'm just setting this up now. So you're back home or in your office, and you've got ProTop, and you're looking at the graphs, and this is what you see. Your database reads go from 0 to 800,000. And you see this in ProTop, and you say, whoa, what's going on? What's reading 800,000 records per second? So all these numbers here are per second, logical reads per second. And then you look at your Mambo MIPS map, and we'll talk about Mambo MIPS a little bit later on in more detail, but it's really kind of the measure of the speed of a single core. So how fast is any one single core? So your Mambo MIPS are dropping down to 0. You've got this old transaction here that's going, and it's going longer and longer and longer, but you're not really doing any database writes. So this is classic. I see this regularly. Or this is a combination rather of two different issues. So we say, okay, what do we do? How do we use ProTop to quickly get to the bottom of these problems? So we do now what's called the live demo. And we cross our fingers that the live demo is going to work as planned. Which one do I want to show you first? This one, I think, is this one. No. The question was, is there a user manual? There will be. I've been battling to find a technical writer. I had never believed it was so difficult to hire a technical writer, and I finally found one. And she's actually going to start in a couple of weeks. Well, she says she is. We'll see if it actually happens. But yeah, I've been trying for 6 months now to hire a technical writer to at least start writing documentation for ProTop. So you're like, of all the things that I have to do every day in my life, I have to search for a technical writer. So it seems they're quite rare. All right, so this is ProTop. This is the free edition. This is what you get when you have the web portal. So we kind of see, like we said earlier, here's my peaks where I'm hitting these, sorry, this is connections, I apologize. So here's my 800,000 reads per second peaks. You can see here, there's no OS reads. I'm only doing logical reads. So everything's in shared memory, right? I can see here my long transaction that was occurring. And actually, you can see now there's a new one that's going on. And you can see here, there's almost no database writes. If you look at the scale here, 0.05 writes per second, that's probably just a login or something like that that's going on into the database. So there's nothing going on. And this NumBI screen here is telling you there's no BI activity. All right. Now, the key thing to understand with this BI graph is it's not showing you the size of the BI file. So if you have a 10 gig or a 20 gig BI file, this is not showing you the size of the BI file. This is showing you how much of the BI you're actually using, irrespective of the size of the physical file. So people often have this problem where they have these large 10 or 20 gig BI files, but they have no clue how much BI they're actually using. And this graph will show you how much BI you're actually using, both in terms of size, which is the BI used, and the NumBI, which is the number of BI clusters that are being used. All right, so very, very useful graph. Locking activity, you can see how many records you're locking, and any kinds of APW statistics, your AI writer statistics, your BI writer statistics, everything's here. And what's interesting here is your record activity. So we saw up here that you had 800,000 database reads per second. I can see here with this graph that my hit ratio is 100%, like we said. So I'm not doing any operating system reads. I can also see that what I call my logical to record ratio. So for every logical read that I do, how many records am I reading? And this should always be 2, or about 2, right? Because you always do an index read, a record read, an index read, a record read. So watch out for this. If this logical to record ratio is more than 2, you'll probably have stuff like can finds or something like that are doing massive index reads in your database without actually reading records. So this is a really big telltale if you're not sitting around 2 all the time. It's always going to be a little bit more than 2, that's fine. It's when you see 10 or 8 that you have a problem that you need to deal with. All right? And then so down here I can see, well, like I said, I'm doing about 800,000 database reads per second. And about 400,000 those are record reads per second, you can see here. And again, no creates, no deletes, no updates, or very little. Just doing the record reads here that I'm doing in the database. So obviously the rest of the reads are index reads likely. There could be lob reads, I guess, but this is a sports database. And I can see that I'm having some kind of latching activity. So here's latch waits. So here's resource waits. There's nothing going on resource waits, but I do have latching activity, and I do have latch waits that are occurring in my database. All right. Now clearly I don't tell you which latches because that's part of the paid product, and I don't tell you which tables are being read because that's part of the paid product. But at least you see now that there's database reads, index reads. You can see this activity. You can see you're having latch issues that you need to deal with. So if you're dealing with this in terms of a post-mortem analysis, you can see that you had reads, but it's not going to be very useful to you in terms of telling you what happened last night because you don't have that data that comes with the paid version, which is which table were we hitting last night, for example. And if you're in client-server, you have a lot of information that you keep track about your client-server activity. So how many messages and how much data per message are you transmitting? So if you're on modern versions of Progress like 10.2b08 or later, there's all these new prefetch parameters that you should all be using. And if you're not using the prefetch parameters, well, then you're having really bad records per message in your client-server architecture, or if you're doing shared lock reads or a bunch of other stuff. So this will kind of show you in client-server how well or how much data you're actually pumping through in client-server mode. So we go back to our problem and we say, okay, well, here it is. The problem is starting again, 800,000 reads per second. So what do I do? So I turn to ProTop, the character edition here. If I can find my mouse. Excuse me. All right. Actually, I wanted to show you, before I do that, let me just go back to here. All right. All right, so what did we see? I'm just going to quickly run through the slides before I jump into ProTop here. So what did we see? Well, we saw massive reads. We saw 100% memory, so there was no OS reads. We saw this long transaction. All right? So these are the two problems that we saw right out of the graphs. All right? So I was about to jump into the character version of ProTop, but then I realized that I actually have some hints, some slides to tell you about how to use ProTop before we jump into it. So first things first, you need a 160 by 48 terminal. So if you're running VT220 in 80 by 24, ProTop simply is not going to work. Download PuTTY or whatever X term you want. You need 160 by 48 to display ProTop, right? The options, we're going to show you the options later. They're case sensitive. So capital A does one thing and lowercase a does another thing. Capital B and lowercase b are two different screens in ProTop. Kind of the three interesting ones we're going to look at today, because we want to pinpoint on a user, right? Who's causing me all this trouble, so that the number sign lets you pick a user ID, and then the U switches your view into what we call the user information viewer. So it's going to let us drill down on that one user and just see exactly what that one user is doing. And then by default, the refresh interval is 10 seconds, but if you want it to be more often than that, you can change the refresh interval. And finally, how do I run ProTop? Well, I run $ProTop bin ProTop, and then either the short name of the database that was configured, or you can put the full path of the database in here too. All right? And obviously in window, it's protop.bat, same thing exactly. All right? And here's all of the screens. Actually, not even all, because there's some hidden screens. But there's a million screens that we can look at in ProTop. All right? And what's nice, has anybody ever used Nmon? Nmon for Unix, for Linux monitoring? No? So ProTop is kind of based on Nmon in that it's Lego bricks. So each screen adds to the other screen. So you can add and remove screens so that you can see the screens that interest you. So we start with some default screens that you'll see in a minute, but then you can add and subtract screens. Well, as much will fit in the geometry of 160 by 48. All right, and I'm going to look at, I made a list here to make sure I don't forget to show you the screens that I wanted to show you. All right, so let's go back to our demo. All right, there's our demo. Everyone can see that. Where's my mouse? All right. So now I'm going to crane my neck. So just some quick things in terms of ProTop. Let me get rid of this first. So, sorry, the machine, I'm really cranking the machine, so it's 100% CPU up to here, which is why it's a little bit slower than usual. Oh, there you go, and I crashed it. I told you, these demos never go right. All right, just give it a second. I'm running about, I think right now, 20 rapid readers doing for each customer pretty much nonstop. So on an Amazon, it's not a micro, but I think it's like a 1 CPU or 2 CPU instance. So the instance is quite charged. All right, here he goes. So what do we see as soon as this record refreshes? Did my thing finish here? Come on. There it is. So what do I see? Well, I see that you're doing 825,000 reads per second. Interesting. That's what we saw in the graphical portal. I see that you're doing 400,000 record reads and 400,000 index reads. And so the ratio logical to record is 2, which is what we saw in the web portal. All right. Uptime, et cetera, that you're looking, users that are connected, all very interesting, but I want to jump right here. What am I seeing? Here is my read activity. All these numbers are per second. So now in real time, I see that I'm hitting the order line table 230,000 times per second, and I'm hitting these other tables 50,000, 40,000, and so on. Here's another cool thing that you get in ProTop. I know the number of records in the table. And so I know how many times you're turning the table. Because honestly, 50,000 reads per second in a table with 2 billion rows is not a big deal. 50,000 reads per second in a table with 200 rows is a big deal, right? And so context is so important when you're looking at some of these numbers. And so here you are in just the main ProTop screen, and you get this context of table reads and index reads. And then if you look at the bottom, you can see which users are actually doing all of this I/O. Now, in my case, I'm running a whole bunch of rapid readers, but in the real world, what usually happens is you see 1 or 2 processes over here that are rapid readers. All right? So before I kind of jump in to looking at kind of what's going on here with this user, actually, no, let me jump in first, and then I'll show you some of the other screens. It's more interesting. So let's just say for fun here that I'm interested in knowing what user number 17 is doing, right? He's doing 106,000 block accesses per second in the database. He's my problem. Clearly, he's my problem. He's responsible for all my reads, whatever I'm using as an example. So I want to zoom in on this user. User number, whatever, 27, 17, it doesn't matter. So I hit hashtag. I'm not clicked there anymore, am I? I moved my focus. There he is. I'm going to put in number 17. And notice here, I can turn client statement cache on right here for this user right now. All right? So I want to know what this user is doing. So I'm going to turn on client statement cache. 99.99% of the time, all you need is single. It's very rare that you'll need stack or one time. So I would tell you always use single unless you know what you're doing. So this will tell me single the last line of code that he ran that accessed the database. So I do this here, all right? First thing you're going to notice here on the bottom is the next time user 17 actually does anything in the database, he's going to show up here. Now, of course, I pick 17. He's not super active. I don't know if he's gone or not. So let's go zoom in now on user number 17. So I'm going to do capital U, and I'm going to switch to this user information view. So this is where it gets cool. So now I'm zoomed in on the user. Right away, I know that he's a self-service ABL batch process. Here he is. He's hitting the order line table, now down to 7,000 reads per second. He's running line number 3 in readalot.p. So this line number 3 is from the debug listing. So what does this mean? It means when you deploy our code into production, during your build process, do your debug listings and stick them in another directory somewhere. And now, if you have a problem, real time, here's line number 13, go pull up the debug listing, there's your problem line of code, go and fix it. So it took me 10 minutes to do this, but in the real world, it'll take you 2 minutes to do this. Really? You come in, you see the PID, you enter the PID, you go into the user information viewer, bang, he tells you what line of code is that he's running. So now he just switched to line 12 of code. So this is really the force now of using ProTop in your real-time environment to debug real-time problems and getting all of this information. All of this information is available to you today without ProTop, but ProTop gives it to you in seconds. And that's really the strength here, to be able to act quickly when faced with a problem and to be able to get down to the problematic line of code in seconds with ProTop. And it's all free. I mean, there's nothing here in the character version that is blocked. So everything is part of the free version here. All right? And you can see here some of the other things the user is doing, but really this is the only thing we care about, right? He's hitting this table and this index. Here's the line of code. And I can see this right away. And I can go see what the line of code is. And so I was talking this morning about another customer. This is the customer. We were there in December, and we were there for 5 days. And in 5 days, we identified 5 programs, and we eliminated 700,000 reads per second in the customer's database. I mean, 5 days, we did a lot of other stuff, but really there was maybe half a day of work to identify all these problematic things. We sat in front of the screen, watched when the problem was. We kind of knew when there was because we have all his history. We watched the screen. We said, there it is. It was sticking, sticking, sticking. What's the user doing? He's running this report or this whatever program. This table, great. Debug listing, here it is. This is the line of code. Now I understand. There was, for each blah, 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 where can find, blah, 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 or something like that. Right? And so this is causing massive index reads in the database. Any questions on this before I kind of jump along? It's cool, no? Like, people, this is free. Like, this is a lot of. I wasn't happy when, when I joined Whitestar 3 years ago, we merged my company with Whitestar, and this is free. And I'm like, this is not supposed to be free. But it's been free for 13 years, and people just aren't aware of it. And who's a partner here? So we encourage partners, bundle ProTop when you deploy to your customer. I don't mind if you take the free version and you distribute it as part of your bundle package. So go ahead and bundle ProTop. So when you get to the customer site and you're dealing with a problem, you already have this installed. You don't have to turn on the trending. You don't have to connect to my servers. Just install the character version. Very, very basic. If you pre-install it, kind of pre-configure it, then you can just drop it with your software in place. And it's just there. You have it. And then worst thing you have to do maybe is run PT3 update to go and download the latest version if you really wanted to download the latest version. So like this stuff I showed you earlier with the client statement cache, that's in the latest version only. So if you go grab, it might actually be in the experimental version. It might not even be in 3.3s. I haven't checked really. So this is all new stuff. So we're always adding functionality to ProTop here. Now, one important thing, don't leave client statement cache on all the time, right? So when it's time to turn off, so we're done. We know what the problem is. We're finished with this guy. Go back to your user number 17 and change this to 0 to turn off client statement cache for this user. All right? So very important to do that. We don't want to turn it on for all users. We don't want to leave it on all the time. Do what you need to do, then turn it off. All right? So let me show you some of the other screens here. I'm going to go back to the dashboard view. All right, which is kind of always the starting view here for the thing. Now you'll notice it didn't bring me back my table and index statistics. That's fine. I just hit D, so I have my dashboard view here. All right? So I want to see other problems. Well, I had a blocked user. I don't know if he's still blocked. So let me hit B for blocked. All right? So here's my blocked user. And let me hit X for transactions. Come on, sweetheart. There it is. All right. So here's my active transactions. User number 8 is in an active transaction for the past 41 minutes. And user number 52, he started a transaction, but he hasn't done anything. Why hasn't he done anything? Because he's waiting on a record, and the rec ID is 385. Oh, who's blocking him? Here's the blocked B for block sessions. User 52 is blocked. He's blocked on a record. He's on a limbo lock waiting for the record. He's waiting for table customer, storage area number wait. The user who's blocking him is on dev PTS6, PID 26884. That's who's blocking him. So this is useful information. When you have these blocked clients and you're getting, people are telling you that whatever process is not working, it's not running, and now you're looking in the log files, nothing's going on. You fire up ProTop and it tells you who's blocked, who's blocking them, what are they blocked on, right? Sometimes it's a latch, sometimes usually it's a record lock. And so now you know the PID of the person who's locking him. It's our friend here, 26884. You can go figure out what is 26884 doing, and you can go and deal with him. Do you want to kill him? Do you want to do whatever you want with him? All right? So another fun thing that happens here, who's ever used ProGetStack? Right, a couple. So just one of you. So imagine now you have no idea what 26884 is doing. You turn on client statement cache, and there's nothing. There's nothing because the database, the process is not doing any kind of DBIO. So what do? You fire up ProGetStack, which comes with Progress. That's not even one of our utilities. So let me bring this back. So our PID was 26884. So does everybody know? Sorry, this is a little smaller. Does everybody know this utility LSOF, list open files? Everyone's heard of list open files? It's a free open source utility. So I do an LSOF of this PID. I want to know what working directory he's in. All right. Oh, I'm not root. But sorry. Bingo. Oh, /home/Paula/Toto. All right, so I'm in /home/Paula/. So let me do pro get stack, which is in $DLC bin. 26884. Super. That will generate a protrace file called protrace.26884. And if you look at the contents of the protrace file, what it's going to show you, all right, what's the command line, what's the startup parameters. This is the actual kernel trace of what's going on. But what's really cool is this ABL stack trace over here. So it's telling you run menu.p, run this.p, run that.p, and every line involved in the stack trace. And now the cool thing about this, it tells you what line you're on, but you're like, ProTop is telling me with client statement cache that I don't see much activity that's going on. So is he stuck here? What's going on? So I can just turn around now and run ProGetStack again. Oh, sorry, I don't need to do that. What am I doing? So I run it again. Oh, looks like he finished now. That's funny. My RP is probably finished. My read probe is probably finished. So the user's gone now. So I didn't kill him. He just probably ended naturally on his own. What I was trying to show you, which is why I don't like doing demos, it's always the same thing, is he'll do a ProGetStack again, and he'll append to the file. So you can actually look at the first timestamp, what was he doing, and at the second timestamp, what he was doing. And you can see if he's actually moving in the code or not, or if he's stuck somewhere, right? So sometimes he's stuck on OS command FTP. That's a classic one, right? OS command FTP, and the FTP command is stuck, right? And your program is stuck. And so ProGetStack will show that to you. All right. So going back to this now here. So so you can see everything's cleared out. I've got no more blocked clients. Everything's kind of slowing down now here. I'm still doing massive reads, but my blocked client's finished, which is good. So what really happened is they lock wait timed out. That's what really happened. So I don't need active transactions. So let's look at some of the other things that are interesting that you can do with ProTop free. So first, if you hit 1, you can look at index range size and table range size information. So by default, progress will only keep statistics for the first 50 tables and the first 50 indexes. And so this will tell you directly here at the bottom, here's what I suggest that you do. Suggested base table and suggested index range size to include all the system tables and the system indexes too. All right? What else? Let's see information about the storage areas. Did I click in the right place? Where's my mouse? Hello? Okay, we're just waiting for it to complete again. Sorry, this thing is running. Let me kill this guy here. Oof. I'm doing a lot of regalots. So the machine is, so it'll show you all the information about your physical storage areas in your database. Are they fixed? Are they variable? How much space is allocated? How much of it you're using already, and so on and so forth. So very quick information about your storage areas. We looked at blocked clients. We looked at transactions. If you're running client server, you hit S, you can see server activity. So shows you all your client server statistics. So like we saw in the portal, but now you can see it here. Now you can notice that, again, we're Legoing the pieces, right? So if I'm no longer interested in storage areas, I just hit A again, and the storage area screen disappears. So I just have my server activity screen. All right. Another important one is C for configuration. Come on, baby. So this is giving you all your startup parameters in your database and kind of the current status of your database. So you can see here the version, the last backup, how long the database has been up. A lot of your startup parameters are available here. And then depending on your version of Progress, later versions of Progress, they store all the startup parameters in _db startup VST. Earlier versions of Progress don't necessarily have all of them. So when ProTop starts up, it's going to scan through the database log file and see if it can pull them out of the database log file. And if it can't, well, the information just isn't available in some of the older versions of Progress. All right. But again, you can see a lot of the basic stuff. Are you running direct IO? When you see something in red, it's because he doesn't like it. So you can see here that there's a mixed configuration. So there's probably some stuff in the schema area that's not supposed to be there. So he's showing you a little bit of red. You can see here table stat and index stat range are 50, which are the default values. So there's probably something not correct there. Your BI cluster size is only 1 meg. It's red. That's probably not a good value. So you can really do a quick kind of view on your database versus kind of what we think are best practices and see if anything shows up red. You know, your BI block size is somewhere here. Your BI, AI BI, these should be red. So they're at 8K, right? We want them to be 16K all the time, your AI and BI block size. So you can see configuration here.
Why would large files be a problem?
If it's not enabled, it'll be a problem. I don't think any modern Progress enterprise database should not have large files enabled. Available means it's available, but it's not enabled. Sorry. So it means you're running enterprise database, which gives you large file, but you didn't turn it on in the database. Excuse me. All right. Oh, we did table activity already. We did this. Come on. Ah, lovely. Will you see this? Ah, there's my sequence activity. Where's my this one I was looking for? Ah, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Remove this. So sequence activity. So especially if you're running older versions of Progress, you haven't enabled 64-bit sequences. So maybe you want to see where you are in terms of your sequence, when you're going to roll your sequences. So more information. And then kind of the last thing I want to show you quickly about ProTop. So if I go to table activity, so you can notice here that little V that you see, you'll see this in a lot of the screens, it's a sort order. So by default, ProTop will sort by reads per second. Typically, it's the most interesting sort order, but maybe you're more interested in creates per second, for example. So you can hit Z and change for all of these different screens, you can change the sort order to something that's more interesting to you. All right. I did this, I did that, I did this. I'm trying to figure out if I forgot. I'm sure I forgot. Yes, I did forget to show you stuff. So a couple of other cool things to show you in the free version. So one of my personal favorites is monitor users of a table. So you get these graphs, or you see in the default view that there's a lot of activity. You've got a lot of users. You see that the order table is being hit, but it's not clear from the user IO table which user it is. So you can say here, let me monitor the users of a table. So I'll use 6 to set the table name, and then I'll use 8 to monitor the users of the table, and it'll show me who's hitting the table. And then same thing for the index. It'll show me who's hitting the index. And then there's a couple of other cool things you can do. There's the dictionary report, the DB analysis report I'll show you. Will generate your update statistics scripts. So for those of you who are not running update statistics, but you have SQL access to your database, this will auto-generate your updates statistics scripts. And then kind of the last thing I want to talk about is programmer mode. Excuse me. So what programmer mode does, which is cool. Let me see if I can get this here. Let me get rid of this. See who's connected here. I still got my read-alots that are probably running like crazy. So here's, you can see all my users that are connected, which is why everything's taking so long here. So what's cool here in terms of programmer mode is I'm just going to start _progress. I'm going to get into the database. All right, here I am. Let me just do something here. Cool. Did I spell that right? So I'm user number 7, all right? So what's cool about developer mode here is I can zoom in now on user number 7. So that's me. But I want to test my programs. I want to see what my programs are doing. So I want to be in programmer mode to do that. So what do? I say, I want to be user number 7, and let me turn on client statement caching. So now it's going to show me the editor, but regardless. All right. Now let me go into my user information view. So that's me, right? User 7, it's a self-service ABL client. All right. Now, what you're seeing now is ProTop is auto-refreshing every 10 seconds, and the number he's showing you here is a rate. So X reads per second, X writes per second. But in programmer mode, you're testing your code. Really what I want to know is how many reads did my program do? That's what's interesting to me. And so what I do is I hit Control P, and you can see that sampling changed to on demand, and my rates changed to summary, which really means it's giving me raw numbers here. So what does that mean? It means that I can zero my counters by hitting spacebar, and I can go back to my other window, and I can say for each customer, I can't type it. I don't even need to display them. So I run my program, and then I come back to ProTop, and I hit spacebar. This is where it gets really cool. So what it tells me is for the execution of my program, I did, what is that, 84 reads of the customer table. I did 84 reads of the custom table. I did some underscore field, underscore file, underscore index because I compiled the program, right? So those are my compilations that are showing up here. So now imagine, again, in your development environment, in your QA, before you push something out to production, you run your code in programmer mode, you refresh the screen, and you know exactly how many table and index you read in every table that your program accesses. And if these numbers make sense, that's great, it continues, but often the numbers don't make sense. And what you see here is 497,000 reads that you did in the customer table to find the one customer whose balance is greater than $100,000 or whatever your program happens to do. So again, we encourage you to use ProTop in your development cycle, just so that every time you're QAing your programs, you could just go into programmer mode, refresh the screen, and see exactly what your program is doing every time. All right? Cool? Pretty cool. I think it's cool. Now, I'm sure I forgot 100 things that ProTop does. And I'm sure someone is going to tell me afterwards that I forgot something, but such is life. All right, so does this work? All right, so programmer mode. Super. All right, last thing before we finish, I promised you guys a very short taste of the paid features. So what are you paying for if you want to get ProTop paid? And some of the stuff I'm going to show you are probably going to be free this summer. We're kind of arguing internally about how much stuff we want to give away for free. I'm kind of on the less side, and Tom Baskin is kind of on the more free side. So you should talk to Tom because you'll more likely get more free stuff. All right? So for me, the most important thing, especially if you're a partner, there's a couple of partners here, if you're supporting your customer base, is the single pane of glass view. So every one of these lines here with a plus next to it, those are distinct customer sites somewhere in the world. And then underneath them are app servers or databases or whatever you want. But the most important thing is I can see which of my resources have critical alerts. I can see what the critical alerts are, and I can see the full alert feed. And of course, I can filter through all of this. If I only want to see one database or one app server or one customer, all of that is, you just click and it filters right away. But the most important thing is single pane of glass view. So this view here that you see, I chopped it off on the screen, but there's probably close to 500, 600 databases just on this single pane of glass view. And so I'm monitoring 500, 600 databases here, and I don't need to know which one of these are fine. All I need to know is which one of these are not fine. And that's the only thing that's important to me. And that's what this does here. All right? And again, I think some of this is going to be free soon. All right? And in terms of the alerts, not only do you get the alerts, but you get a lot of the crucial details that we showed you in the character version. So for example, not only does it tell you, for example, that you are reading the table, but it tells you that you are reading the invoice table, which contains 147 records. You are reading the entire table 260 times per second. So it gives you this kind of this granularity of information. It tells you that you are reading the, where'd it go? Order table, which contains 207 records, and you are reading it 53,000 times per second. All right? So it tells you that you have blocked clients, but it also can alert if a client is blocked for longer than a certain period of time. So this alert is telling me that this user has been blocked for 2 minutes and 1 second, which is higher than my 30-second block threshold. So it's telling me not only who's blocked, but how long they've been blocked. And the last alert tells me how many sessions are blocked. So I can say if I have more than 1, 2, 5, 10 blocked sessions, generate an alert, and then tell me this information that you saw in the character version. Who's blocking them? What are they blocked on? A latch, a table? What's the rec ID? Who's blocking them? And so on and so forth. So all of this is in the alerts that are a part of the paid product. All right? Years and years of history. So here you can see my famous 2.5 million read customer per second. And you can see here he's down So it's interesting here. We got them way down, and then the vendor put in some code that actually increased the reads per second. So we fixed a bunch of code, and then he put more garbage code into production. So that was amusing. But you can generally see I have here months, and we were there in December, so we intervened around here, and then you can see as the stuff got put into production and continues to be put into production on this customer. And then probably one of the most fun one is really seeing table and index statistics. So if I look at our examples that we've looked at today, we're really trending record reads, which table, which index is being hit. So when you're doing your postmortem analysis, you can see that it's really the order line table that caused the problem last night from 2 a.m. to 3 a.m. And that gives you much more visibility into what the problem might be. Oh, I know which batch runs at night that hits the order line table, right? So much more visibility. And then the other key one is latch activity and latch weights. So when you're having, if your latches are not tuned properly, some of the startup parameters, and you're having latching issues, well, ProTop will tell you, oh, this time you're hitting the buffer hash table latch. A lot of times it's the LRU latch. In this case, it's the buffer hash table latch that was the problem, right? And he's showing you the weights per second on that latch at that point in time. And you can see here, as my stuff was ramping up, my latching activity increased and increased and increased as the machine became swamped. Right. I think I'm on time. It's good. So I can show you guys quickly too here, just for fun, since I'm here. You can ask your questions, but I'm just going to show you. I think this is not you. Yeah, so just quickly, now this resolution is not great, but here's our same database. So you can see here the same thing, the same graphs. Here's my table that I'm hitting, and also my table turns that I'm hitting. And what's interesting here is if I want to change the scale, because this scale is so high, okay, I know it's order line, so I can remove order line. And you notice the scale changed now, because now I'm only seeing order, there's invoice, there's customer, there's state, there's item, right? All that's available to me now. And then you'll notice as I move the cursor, the vertical line moves in all the other graphs at the same time, so we can correlate. And then in terms of history, I'm just going to take another one with a little bit more history, which will be more interesting. Yeah, so here's that customer. So here you're looking at from February, right? So what is that, 2 or 3 months of history? So you can see here, this is that thing that runs every night at 8 o'clock. You can see 11 o'clock that I told you about that he has never fixed. It's been years like this. And that's 630, 700,000 reads per second for the couple of hours that this batch job runs, right? Which is a little bit insane. But what's cool with ProTop 2 is, again, you can just zoom. So I want to zoom in on this period, and you can see it takes a few seconds just to zoom in on that period, right? And then so same thing when you're kind of in the main dashboard view. So you can see every day he hits 2,000 concurrent users, right? Tuck, 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 very simple. And you say, I want to zoom in. Why is this one smaller? What happened here? Oh, let me zoom in here. I'll just zoom in on this period here, right? And then I can zoom in on that period here, and it tells me what's going on. And I wanted to talk to you about Mambo Go quickly before I quit, but and you can see, and then you know, just a bunch of stuff. You can shift the time forward. If I double click, I'll zoom out. Right, I showed you how to zoom in, zoom out. Or if you go to the date and time picker, you can say, you know what, just show me the last 2 days. All this is, and again, the free version, you have 2 days of data. The paid version, you have up to 3 years of data. All right? And so the last thing I wanted to show you is the BOGO MIPS graph. And this is fun for you to try when you install ProTop at home. So it's an interesting thing to do. What BOGO MIPS attempts to do in the 4GL is calculate how fast any one single CPU is. All right? And what you should be seeing most of the time is a flat line. If you start seeing a lot, so there's variation there you can see. If you're seeing a lot of variation, it usually means one of two things. One, that the CPUs are overstressed. So really you're using all of your CPUs, and so the process that's trying to count in the 4GL program is not getting the CPU time that it needs. So that's the first thing. Second, if you're in a virtualized environment, it's very possible that the hypervisor, so the VMware infrastructure, is not giving you the CPUs it promised to give you because it's over-provisioned. So if you're seeing these kinds of jagged lines all the time, it's because you could be in an over-provisioned environment. And then the last thing, a modern CPU, a modern Intel Xeon CPU should be showing you 5 or 6. So if you go back home and this is showing you 1 or 2, then either you're running really, really old hardware or there's some other problem somewhere. So if you're running modern hardware, you should see about 5 or 6. And then same thing for I/O response time here. This is a measure of how fast your disks are. And so you should be seeing, if you're running on local SSD drives, you should be seeing numbers like this, you know, 1/10 of a millisecond. If you're running on SANs, you'll probably see single-digit millisecond response time. If you're seeing 10 and 20 and 40 millisecond response time, something's wrong with your disk subsystem. And I think when you run the sync I/O test, it'll probably confirm something's wrong with your disk I/O subsystem. All right?
The other good thing that the program shows as well is that we referred to it this morning about the customer who had 42 processors and you dropped it down to 16 and they saw an improvement in performance of their processors. You can see, we had a customer, Tom helped us with the same thing in my previous job. They had
They were NUMA, though. They had a NUMA issue right then.
no,
It wasn't a NUMA issue?
It wasn't a NUMA issue. They only had something like 16 course provisions for the database server, and we dropped it down to 2, and it practically doubled the programming overnight, which is crazy.
It's an interesting thing, but in the Progress database world, I don't know in Oracle or the others, but in the Progress world, more CPUs is not necessarily better because of context switching issues and because of NUMA issues in modern servers. So if you have a large number of CPUs provisioned for your production box, the first thing I would check is if you're crossing NUMA boundaries. And again, very hard to convince a customer to drop the number of CPUs to improve performance. And yet it is classically true. We've seen it over and over again. You drop the number of CPUs to less than the NUMA boundary, and then depending if you're AIX or whatever, you might have to run some commands to improve the affinity of the CPUs to the VMs, but then you stop crossing the NUMA boundaries and your performance goes up in leaps and bounds just because you've got rid of these NUMA issues. So, and if you don't know what the NUMA issues are, you can come see me afterwards or you can Google it. So, but it's up there in the GDPR range of scary, these NUMA issues. So. Questions? I tried not to make it commercial here, right? It's free. 99% of what I showed you is free, right? Any questions? I have a few more of these DBA quick reference cards left if you guys didn't get them. So I tried to cram every DBA command I could think of onto one sheet. So if you don't have one or if you want to bring some home, if you want my contact info or if you have any questions or whatever, feel free to email me anytime. Happy to help anytime. And if you want to try the paid features, then give me a call. We'll set you up on a trial so that you can at least try the full packaged version versus the free version. All right? Cool. Thank you.
Thanks everyone for coming. It's been a really good day. I hope you find it beneficial. We will be something out next year, I'm sure. And there's always Dublin in the autumn. But thanks for coming. The workshop is still going on in there, so feel free to hang about if you want a coffee or anything before you head off. But yeah, look forward to seeing you again.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. You asked me, did you?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I remember.
Cool.
Yeah, cool.
Where is it? I don't even know.
Give me a list of when I'm driving, so.
Cool.
Or Martin's driving.
Yeah, I'm all set. Cool.
I'm just going to finish it.
Yeah, no worries. Good. No worries, guys. Thanks for coming. Thanks for listening to me ramble.
Thanks very much. That's really useful.
Cool. Great. Thanks. Okay. crap! I had one more shirt to give away. Who's an extra large? I saw you. I did the same thing this morning. You're too small for this. I need an extra. Are you an extra? You look like you might be an extra. Here, you look like you're an extra large.
Thank you.
No, my pleasure.
You've got multiple sites. If you're on the paid for one, how does it work licensing? Do you just pay per site or do you pay as a partner, as a deployment or what?
So it's a little bit different for partners versus end users. So for partners, we kind of have two models. We have the reseller model, and most of our partners do both actually. So there's the reseller model, which means you sell it to your customer, you make a margin. Same with the progress licenses, right? And then the customer is the one who receives the alerts. The customer is ProTop. If you want to use it to monitor your customers, the customer does not have access to ProTop. You have access. Occasionally, we might give the customers read-only access to ProTop, for example, but he won't get any alerts or any of that stuff. So you're our customers, right? And then it basically depends on how many sites you have. Is it 10 sites or is it 100 sites? And then the pricing is based on that.
Based on number of sites.
Right. But it's really not. I mean, if you're a partner with a relatively large number of sites,
Not necessarily. I mean, we are a partner, but we've probably only got like 15 sites.
yeah. Yeah, so it's not really incredibly expensive. The trouble we have with partners, or I should say rather the trouble the partners have with their customers is to decide, do they absorb that cost?
Yeah, it's how we price it. That's a commercial decision.
Correct. So are you already offering 24/7 support to your customers? And so this is going to let you provide better support, more proactive, or do we have partners now who are adding 24/7 support? And so ProTop is bundled with that for their customers.
That's worth consideration. Definitely worth a look in more detail. Anyway.
Yeah. And we can deploy anywhere Amazon deploys, or we can deploy on premise for you. So if you have a
Do the magic trick and then see if I can just no.
Oi.
Move the expensive item first.
Yeah.
For £1,000, you can do the magic trick. I think there's more of my pens over there too, so. Honestly, I don't like those fancy pens. I get those click pens. The pens that I give out, those are the pens I like. They're very simple click pens. They write well, they're normal, they're not fancy. It does the job. Yeah, that's all we care about. My pleasure. Like I said, give me a ring. We'll set you up on a trial version. You could play with it at one or two of your, kind of more important customers.
Yeah.
And then you can see if there's value there for you or not.
I mean, not one of our customers 24/7 support as such, but it's interesting to, the board of seeing if there are performances or what's happening there and keeping an eye on that is a good idea.
Yeah, it's really expectations, right? I mean, what's your customer? I mean, if you've had them for 10 years and reactive support is fine, something's wrong, they call you, you fix it, and they're not really mad about that.
Exactly, they're fine. I mean, it's not like you say, it's not financial services or
Exactly.
health or
Exactly.
So they are okay. It's just interesting from that side of it, from a techie point of view.
Much more interesting to us than others.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's always it's the business case here, right? To say it's gonna cost you whatever it costs you to run ProTop to monitor your customers, but I can't sell you. I mean, if your customers don't care, they crash, you bring them up, and nobody cares. Then
They don't crash that often as well. That's the thing. I mean, it's relatively stable, but the user base, the number of users, it's small fry, as I say, compared to 2,000 users.
Yeah.
We've got say 50 at most.
Yeah, but we have customers down to 10 users. I mean, right? It all depends on how if it goes down, what does it mean? Right? It's really what it comes down to. And then with the business continuity talk, So now, are you running replication? Are you running AI? Are you monitoring any of that stuff, and so on and so forth?
I mean, we've had those running, in the past with warm standbys and things. Never needed them, but it's different customers have different needs.
Exactly.
Size or what they're. It's like you say, it's an insurance. It's who's willing to.
Absolutely.
pay.
Who's willing to pay insurance? You're 100%. It's an insurance policy.
Yeah.
And if they don't want it, then they don't want it. But at least if you put the free version out with your code, so when you need it, it's kind of already there so that you can debug a real-time issue.
Yeah.
Even if you don't have the historical data, at least you can debug in real time. So.
Yeah, I
With
mean,
the free version.
That programmer mode looks quite interesting as well, because in the past we've used, the logging and looking at the query logs,
Right.
etc. Looking at that information by there, but that's obviously a time saver.
Yeah, that's the nice thing. It's like all instant feedback really is what's going on here. So pretty cool.
Yeah,
All right, take care, guys.
And you have a safe journey back. Enjoy
Thanks.
All day too, by the way.
That's true, yeah. If I make it home in time.